Jarvis, drop my needle.
Hello, this is the hardcore legend Mick Foley, and if you are interested in listening to idiots, you came to the right place. Have a nice day.
Woo! That's an attention getter.
He's a very strange young man.
He's an idiot.
What we're dealing with here is a complete lack of respect for the law.
Oh my God, he's an idiot.
You know, of course, that you're out of your jurisdiction.
Personally, I think you're an idiot.
But that's the evidence in the car.
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Always like to keep my audience riveted.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, friends and fiends, and welcome to Free Range Idiocy, the podcast about everything, but mostly just the stuff we like. Reboots and remakes. Whether you love them or loathe them, they're a fact of life in entertainment. If there's $1 to be made and enough juice to squeeze out of a property the studio or network already owns the rights to, you best believe they'll dress that sucker up and shove it out in the street corner to see what kind of return they can get. Which brings us to one of our favorite punching bags, the Vaporware-esque Battlestar Galactica reboot from Sam Esmail. Since we've been waiting years to get any sort of news at all, your humble idiotic servants are taking matters into their own hands and fantasy booking how we'd handle a BSG reboot in this episode 149, Beyond the Red Line. I am your Uncle Todd, and with me, as always, is the man who once drove his Honda Fit out of a drainage tube so he could feel what a Viper launch was like. He has been my partner in idiocy for over 2 decades and is 3 years into his parole with the Chicago Water District. I give you the man they call Tim.
Greetings and salutations, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. Oh,
during our off
sexy
time,
beast,
during my off time, I augmented my voice to be 2 octaves deeper than normal.
He had an Isaac Hayes voice transplant.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing what you can do with a 3D printer and a YouTube video and a scalpel.
Dig it! Yeah.
Don't worry, that didn't peak levels and almost deafen me or anything.
Well, I can't tell where my levels are at, so we're flying solo right now, ladies and gentlemen.
Good. So much for instrument flying. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our first ever episode in video. And if this video didn't work, then I'll just delete this part right away. Or maybe I'll leave it and just to prove how idiotic we are. I am finally out of the basement. I
was going to say, are there going to be any random spider fallings while you're recording tonight, sir?
I'm pretty sure I vacuumed pretty well in here,
All right.
I think I'm safe.
I see a door behind you, so if you think I'm going to say a word if Kaylin sneaks up on you,
no, I've got a little spy. I've got my monitor here. I'm definitely going to know if she's sneaking up this time. Yeah.
All right.
I thought about putting up a tripwire as well, but that just seemed kind of cruel.
Good Lord.
So this is going to be interesting, folks. This is actually the kickoff of season 6. We are this many years old. And we just figured that since we're starting off in video, it made sense that this would be the beginning of a new season. Beginning of a new year, same old us, really.
A new era.
A new era,
of idiocy.
Which is
with video.
God-awfully frightening, quite honestly. We get further and further down the tunnel of idiocy. But we will be talking about the BSG reboot.
Uh-huh.
In fact, this is probably the most you are going to hear about this BSG reboot anytime soon. So we're gonna take the rug right out from Mr. Esmail.
I'd say this is therapy for us in some way because we're sick and tired of hearing about what could be, and we want to talk about what should be. So
I look at this more as a reverse jinx. I don't want this show to happen under any circumstances. So I'm hoping by us talking about it, it means it won't happen. That's my hope and fervent prayer. That's all.
There you go. There you go. Good on you, sir. In the words of LA Knight, good on you.
Good. I didn't know that was one of his catchphrases.
Yeah, he says it once in a while.
I must have missed that one. Yeah. And I'm probably going to adjust my mic about 18 different times tonight. Hang on a second.
Yeah, that's because you're picky like that.
Yeah, I
got to have the precise
whiny
vertical and horizontal from the mouth region to make sure he can come across smooth and silky.
You see what I have to put up with here, folks. You see what I have to put up with. The man's voice drops.
It's been like 4 weeks since we've 4 or 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks since we've recorded. So it's a lot of.
I knew we were in for trouble as soon as that second testicle dropped, and he.
Good God Almighty, jeez Louise. And there we go, folks.
Back
Right
here
off
in
the
college,
rails.
he used to talk like this. Anyways, but before we dig into the main subject at hand, we are going to dig into our little thing we like to call the Week in Geek. This is bits and baubles and little bits of internet driftwood, I guess you could say. Not quite worthy of their own show, but worthy of mention. And that is handled by the man they call Tim. Sir, what do we have for the Week in Geek?
Well, it has been a while, and so I thought it was appropriate to circle back to a very popular segment, one that Uncle Todd, holds with bated breath to hear about and to experience, and that is Tales from the Fantasy Gridiron.
You know, if I knew this was coming, I would have just brought the bottle in.
As we are in football playoff season at the moment. I thought it was apropos to report back on my playoff experience in my fantasy league.
Oh, wait, is it over?
It is over now.
Oh, thank God. At least this is the last one. All right.
It is. Well, I might do
Hit
a
me with it.
retrospective next episode.
No, you won't, sir. No, you won't.
Yeah, there's certain things Uncle Todd can live with, but that he cannot.
I draw the line.
That's the red line we don't go beyond.
That is right there.
But so when we last left things, I was in the semifinals. Or quarterfinals. I advanced to the semifinals where I played. I was in third place, taking on second place. So I was 9-5-1, taking on 10-5 team. I ended up losing that match by 11 points. So
not quite what I hoped for. I was hoping for the finals to maximize the heartbreak.
No.
But I'll take it.
It was okay because I ended up losing to the team who ended up winning our league outright. He went to the finals, and he had a very strong outing there.
So this is Tim right now wrapping himself in his security blanket, like, at least I got beaten by the
No,
future champ.
I'm giving credit where it is due. So
Good. Okay.
My good friend Matt from I have multiple friends named Matt, one in New Hampshire, one out here in Illinois. This is the Illinois Matt.
It's like Ocean's 11. You know, my business manager, Bernie, you know? I thought your other business, they're both named Bernie.
Now, what Uncle Todd will relish is when I went into the consolation bracket for third place, I ended up getting my clock clean 256 to 185. Unfortunately, succumbed to a situation where most of my strong starters were benched by their respective teams, and so
that last weekend of the season thing.
Yep. So I had a very rough end, but ironically, it didn't really change a whole lot. I was already in fourth place going into the playoffs. I ended up in fourth place to finish the season. So all that matters to me is that my record stood at 9-5-1, 4 games above where Uncle Todd, or 5 games above, should I say, where Uncle Todd had predicted I would end up. And so his prediction did not lead to pain.
Still, I gave up on the 500 thing. I was just hoping that you would lose and lose big in the playoffs, and I would say 2 playoff losses right in a row. Mm-hmm. Thank you, fantasy gods. This one is for you.
So wrap up the season 9-5-1. It was a great campaign. It was a lot of fun, and I look forward to next season, where Uncle Todd may join me. Maybe I convince him to join the ranks.
This is what I love
again
about fantasy football, all right? Because I was in it for so long, and now being outside of it, I imagine it's like, recovering alcoholics watching drunk people going, did I used to act like that? Did I used to talk about the campaign like it was an actual team instead of a fake team that I put together?
And I think we need to share with the people listening here that I have been, like, for the last probably close to decade and a half now, the commissioner of this league, taking it over from Uncle Todd. So he had started the league. He got tired of being the commish. I took it over, and now I'm like carrying the baton, but it's kind of like a curse in a way, because it's like I haven't thought about getting rid of it, but if I get rid of it, no one else is going to want it, and the league is going to die. So
it's a white elephant, sir. I've burdened you with it. You are burdened, instead of burdened with great purpose, you're burdened with great idiocy.
Well, I am. That much is for certain. All right. Well, that wraps up our 2023-2024 Fantasy Gridiron, or Tales from the Fantasy Gridiron.
Thank God. Wait, who said that?
Except for the retrospective next week.
No.
Which will be a 9-part.
He's going to set it to like, nobody does it better. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be like the Tony Stark montage at the beginning of Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yep. Next article I have is a little different. We don't do a lot of music-oriented articles. We're normally in the Star Wars, Marvel, sci-fi kind of realm when we do this, and catching up on all the things that are going on in that space. But this was an article I came across from WMMR.com, 93.3. Don't know where 93.3, but it's just 93.3 WMMR. But a story that was written where Geddy Lee, bassist from the band, formerly bassist from the band called Rush, shared a touching story about Robert Plant, which I thought was kind of cool. And it was he's been going around doing a book tour. I'll talk some more about this in our and another thing. But when he was in Los Angeles, and what he's been doing is basically doing kind of like a talking book tour where he. I attended the one in Chicago, and it's basically a 2-hour thing, and he's interviewed by a special guest host, and talks about various things. He does some readings from his book, does a Q&A with the audience, and just a very, very down to earth guy. But he said that he and Robert Plant first met while the two were vacationing Morocco at the same time during the mid-90s. They met for dinner. They got along really well, and then
as you do.
Absolutely. And then in 98, Plant reached out to Rush's management to get in contact with Lee. And it turns out, Plant wanted to invite him to a show with him and Jimmy Page in Toronto. And it was interesting because Lee was saying, he told Plant that, he didn't know if he'd be up for going to a gig because it was kind of shortly after Neil Peart, their drummer, had lost his wife, and then prior to that, less than a year prior to that, had lost his daughter. So they were kind of in a period of mourning, and it also, in a lot of ways, probably, from their perspective, meant the end of the band because Peart needed, to just kind of step away after kind of going through that kind of loss. Yeah. And Plant, and so Lee shares that Plant said to him, he said, and I quote, "Look, I've had my own share of loss, and you have to get on with your life, and sooner is better than later. I want you to come down and call Alex and just come on down." And so Lee said that he and Lifeson ended up taking up Plant on his offer, and that he and Page couldn't have been nicer to them. And so he's just sharing this nice story of a fellow rock legend, a fellow musician, just kind of understanding where he was at, and just trying to encourage him to kind of get, back on the horse and back, kind of into music, even though, they were certainly processing a lot of things. And so I thought that was kind of cool. I thought there was, just in a time when we are bombarded with a lot of negative sort of stories, it's very nice to see humanity play out in a positive way. And so I just thought I would share that.
Very nice. Yeah. No, that's heartwarming even. It is. I mean, it's no, is Kang going to be the big bad, but it is, it is Geddy Lee in the Big Bad Book of Bass. So I'm kind of done with talking about Kang.
Gotta be Kang.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
And our last one, which I've titled, "Hey MCU, where's White Vision at?" 3 years later, this is from our friends.
Wherein the man they called Tim inadvertently tributed Blazing Saddles and had no idea. I was like, it's even the right cadence, but
oh gosh,
if you know, you know.
Yeah.
But anyways, tell us about White Vision.
From our friends at ScreenRant.com, wondering after 3 years, which, by the way, it's been 3 years since WandaVision. Has it felt like 3 years since WandaVision?
Dude, I mean, we may be out of the COVID, isolation bubble, but time just really doesn't have the same meaning anymore, does it?
No, it doesn't.
There's still times when I'm like, oh, wow, that was interesting. That just happened. Oh, that was a year and a half ago? Well, what do I know? No, it's been a while, but, there's been a lot in between there.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're anxiously awaiting. Marvel has announced. I think it's coming out this year that we will have Agatha. I don't know if it's called Agatha Darkhold Diaries or something else. I thought it was called.
No, it was going to be Coven of Chaos. Now it's Darkhold Diaries.
Okay.
And supposedly Aubrey Plaza,
yes,
has a rather significant part in this show. Which Catherine Hahn and Aubrey Plaza together. Yes, please.
Mm-hmm.
Can we just have as many scenes of those two together, just chewing scenery together? I mean, I'm good with that for like 8-10 episodes. Sign me up.
Yep. So yeah, so the article is asking the question, where is the new version of Vision, because we haven't seen him since WandaVision. There was an announced show called Vision Quest that was supposed to be in development at Marvel back in October 2022.
Oh yeah.
That clearly has not come to fruition. So, and that one, it was expected that Paul Bettany would return as White Vision, leading the new character on a journey to rediscover his memories and his humanity following his death in Infinity War and corruption in WandaVision. So, it's unclear if this will ever get picked up again. There is a rumor that the series could, pick up steam and premiere at some point in 2025. But that's a rumor. It has not been announced. It's also, likely as well that, White Vision could make a appearance in one of the Avengers movies, as a, kind of a probably do ex machina sort of, plot device that can, come in and magically save the heroes from whatever, issue that they're dealing with, probably due to Kang.
Whoever that might be now.
But it also,
who I want to see is Kang. I mean, if we're going to recast Kang, Wanda Sykes. Let's just go in a whole other direction with Kang. Let's make Kang just like a real like smart ass,
sassy.
Just like over the top,
bringing the sass,
having it like, and let's just turn this whole thing on its head.
Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I don't know why I picked Wanda Sykes, but that just is it makes me giggle thinking about like if you just went back and retrofitted her into like Quantum Mania.
Yeah.
Movie would get better by 30% easily.
Yeah.
Actually, my opinion.
My wife and I are watching. We're about to wrap up the series Will and Grace, and we're in the last season of it. And Wanda Sykes actually is in an episode or two, and
she is.
She is hysterical. Oh my god, she is hysterical.
Yeah. I don't understand how Wanda Sykes did not have a bigger career.
Yeah, I don't either. She was
at a higher level. I mean,
yeah.
I'm sure it seems like she's done well for herself in terms of, because I mean, there's a whole lot of like comedians, musicians and things like that have made really good careers from themselves that you would never guess, just because they're not like the biggest thing. Because you only hear about like the top 5 comedians in the world at any given moment, if that. But it seems like she's done well for herself. But man, everything I've seen her in, every comedy special I've seen with her is just,
oh yeah.
I'm like, how are you not huger?
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
Anyways.
The other 2 vehicles we could see Vision return in is there's something called Armor Wars, which is supposed to be Don Cheadle's first appearance in the MCU since his controversial Skrull storyline in Secret Invasion, which
I thought that was going to be a TV show. Isn't it now a movie?
It doesn't say in the article. It just references it. So I had thought it was going to be a show as well.
Okay.
The other thing that he could pop into is basically playing an important role. I haven't seen the Marvels yet, but apparently there's a post-credit scene that provides the first kind of tease toward the formation of the Young Avengers. And so they're theorizing here that, Vision could play an important role on the Young Avengers, serving as like the team mentor, if you will, the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the group, if you will, which would be kind of interesting. So yeah, I mean, and to me, I was telling Uncle Todd this in our pre-production meeting earlier, but this is to me what I feel is the problem with Phase 4 as compared to the first 3 phases is there's so much being introduced, and then it's like it just disappears, and there's so much stuff that's been going on that it makes you wonder, where is this Vision during the events of the Eternals, during the events of Doctor Strange and I'm forgetting the rest of it, but the latest
Multiverse of Madness.
Multiverse of Madness. or other characters for that matter. I mean, heck, even with the Eternals, they're still the Celestial that had threatened to destroy Earth and will judge them and stuff like that. It's like I don't know. There's all this stuff that's like open, that needs to be closed, but I don't know how they're going to close it all because there's so many open threads right now, and I don't know the direction they're going in. So,
well, it's kind of the opposite problem that Star Wars has had, where we've taken them to task for not expanding the universe enough. Marvel has expanded their universe like
so much.
kudzu or dandelions, whatever. Pick your weed of choice, and it's just spreading in every direction.
Did you say weed?
Is that what you got going on in your humidifier right now?
I'm feeling a little funky. It might be more because of the old Forester here, but
No, what proof is that again?
This is 115, sir.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting that. That's like your solution to solving any cold is just burn it out with a high proof.
That's what I'm trying. I'm just trying to burn it out, ladies and gentlemen. Just burn it out.
Go and have a NyQuil chaser with that and see how it goes.
I'm going to be taking that after we're done recording.
And then waking up sometime around Thursday. We're recording on Monday, by the way. All right. Well, thank you so much for that dive into geekdom.
That, my friends, is the Week in Geek.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir. And now we're going to get into the main topic at hand, which is... Oh,
it's a brainchild of yours, sir, and rightfully so.
This has been going on almost as long as this show.
For far too long.
Yeah. The idea of when Peacock was going to launch, the much ballyhooed centerpiece of the new streaming service was this Battlestar Galactica reboot by Sam Esmail, Mr. Robot Esmail. And this was going to be a huge thing, and then Peacock launched, and no Battlestar Galactica. Some years later, still no Battlestar Galactica. WWE has been absorbed into the Peacock fold, and still no Battlestar Galactica.
You know what we said from day one when we heard this story?
What?
Yes, suspect.
Oh, it's totally suspect. It does seem like the very definition of a long con, quite honestly.
They're heretofore.
So this Tim sent me this article from themarysue.com.
Turned out to be clickbait, man.
Oh, it totally is. So everything we know about the Battlestar Galactica reboot, written by Shaban Ball, which is definitely one of the funnier names for an AI program that I've seen. This is totally just like another rehash of the exact same three talking points that have been going along. There's one bit of variation. So the all along, from what I remember, and we would have to dig through the archives in order to find this. And let's face it, neither one of us is going to do that.
Sadly, no.
It sounded like originally the plan was to develop this show, and if I'm remembering correctly, which quite honestly, my memory is the only thing more suspect than this show.
Mm-hmm.
The idea was that this was going to take place in the Ron Moore universe.
See,
which to me seemed very weird because Battlestar Galactica, the ship itself, was steered into the sun at the end of that show. So I'm like, okay, you're going to have a show called Battlestar Galactica. It's going to take place in the same universe, but yet it's not going to take place on the Battlestar Galactica. So it'd be like doing Gilligan's Island, but yet you're in, Tallahassee, Florida. Like, huh? I'm sorry, where?
I think the Macho Man was from there.
Oh, yeah. Anyways, so it was baffling. So in this article, it seems, I think for the first time, if I'm remembering right, now they're saying that this is going to be a true reboot. The word is this is a true reboot, except they still leave the door open unless it's a continuation. I'm like, okay, so then we know nothing. So we're kind of looking at this from two different directions, whether it's a reboot or whether this is going to take place in the same universe as the Ron Moore reimagining from 2003 through 2009.
Yes.
So we've decided to divide and conquer with this. just because of the way this worked out.
You say decided like we had a plan. This was basically formulated like 5 minutes before we went live.
Dude, shut up! They don't need to know that.
Work
with me here.
This is how the sausage is made, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, good Lord!
I could go for some kielbasa right now. Some brown mustard.
Amen.
Oh.
Amen.
I can feel my cholesterol raise about 100 points just thinking about it.
So, anyways, pitter patter.
I know, and well, don't say that, sir. It's okay for me to say that. It's not okay for you to say that.
By the way, over a month, 0 episodes, ladies and gentlemen. I am good to go.
Hang on a minute. Wait, you had that ablation longer than a month ago. So what happened?
So the ablation actually it takes about 90 days for it to really set in because it is a process of the heart kind of scarring in order to block those like misfires that are going on, and so that scarring takes time. And so I was still experiencing. It was much less, and they were much shorter episodes. Maybe like once every couple days or something. Like I went from going like I had like 3 episodes, 4 episodes a day, down to like 1 episode every couple of days, or maybe 1 or 2 a week. And then somewhere around like late December, it was like just before Christmas, all of a sudden it just like stopped.
Merry fracking Christmas to you, sir.
Indeed. And it has been that way ever since. I have not had a single problem. I have not had an episode. I am feeling good and just being thankful that I don't have to deal with the craziness of my heart doing its own thing. So
amen to that.
Thank you. But I take us off topic. So back to the topic.
That's the name of the show here. So anyways, the thought process here is to divide and conquer. So for me, this really did not make much sense. This is the great thing about having video now. Why are you even hiding? Like they can still see you.
I'm trying to not make a lot of noise.
Either that or people think he's got an air sickness bag down by his desk.
No, I just didn't want to go, like blow my nose into the mic. I just moved the mic away out of politeness for our listeners. They don't need to hear that.
It's all right, dude. Puke and rally. You're familiar with that. You're familiar with that from your time at UConn and UNH, right?
Indeed.
So anyways, Tim came up with a whole bunch of ideas, or at least he came up with a few ideas as far as if it's within the Ron Moore universe. What makes most sense to me is that this is a reboot. There is no continuation at all. So that'll be kind of my yarn to spin there, and Tim is going to tackle the continuation.
A little bit of fantasy booking. I don't think we've really done that before, have we?
Not really, because we haven't had 5 years to think about most things. We hear about it, and then it's out.
It's about how long it takes for us to formulate an idea. 5 years.
Yeah. Can't even argue with you.
Well, it is.
All right, so should we flip for who goes first, or do you want to defer to the second half? What do you want to do here?
I'll defer to the second half. You go first, sir. You have a lot of thought down here on the reboot version of BSG. So what does this look like to you? What's the shape this is going to take? Are we going to have a equally as impressive Adama as we had in the 2004 episode or series, or what?
So the shape this is taking to me, no matter what this ends up happening, is the shape is basically of an enema bag. I think is how this is looking. And I'm being a little bit of a wise guy there, but also, you are going to have to find a way to purge the Ron Moore show from people's minds. And that's the thing that is really interesting to me about this exercise. Now, I will say I am very unfamiliar with the work of one Mr. Sam Esmail. I did not watch Mr. Robot. I haven't seen anything he's done except the other night I just so happened to be awake and dealing with a little bit of insomnia. And I figured, you know what? I have seen enough shtick about this Leave the World Behind movie on Netflix. I'm going to give that a watch. And so this is the only thing that I've seen of Mr. Esmail's filmography. However, I think it might be a decent indication in that it is not his own source material. It's based on a novel, and he wrote and directed the flick. So I was like, okay, if there's a way that you can have someone who has and this is also recent, so he obviously has enough clout to kind of do what he wants, but he's working from source material. So I figure it's kind of got to be a similar creative spot he's in with Peacock in terms of developing this. He's working with source material, but he also has a high degree of freedom to do what he wants and to really execute his vision. So watching that movie, it was actually pretty good. Not to spoil anything or to get too deeply into it. I'm not sure if some of the camera movements and things that he was doing was basically to try and disorient you and to create as much tension as possible, because that was the entire movie. Essentially, it was just building tension right from the first minute of the movie was just building tension. So I kind of wonder if we're going to see something like that. We're going to see, rather than kind of the documentary style of Ron Moore's show, if we're going, maybe we'll see more of a thriller aspect of it, which Ron Moore's BSG ventured into that territory of a lot of tension at sometimes, but I wonder if this is going to be lean much more into that. Makes me wonder that, or if that's just a flick. I don't know. So where I'm kind of going with this, though, is where the 2004 Ron Moore show really had to, the reimagining, because that was the first time I'd ever really heard that, as opposed to a remake or a reboot. And I think it's apt. Now I think it probably is overused, but they had to reimagine the source material in order to differentiate itself from the original. And the interesting thing here is, when you do the math, it's not that dissimilar in terms of time period. Can you fracking believe it's been 20 years since the miniseries and the premiere of season 1 of BSG Ron Moore?
I cannot. That's crazy, man. That is absolutely crazy.
When the miniseries came out in 2003, it would have been 24 years.
Jeez.
24, 25 years. So, I mean,
wow,
give or take a few years, but we're still dealing with a fairly sizable chunk of time. But so he's going to have to try and differentiate from the Ron Moore show more so than the original. So what I think he's going to have to do is he's going to have to go back to the original to grab source material from there and tweak that, rather than trying to go back to the 2004 show. So in other words, if Cylons look like humans, it's going to have to be for some other reason, or he's going to have to handle it in a very different way, not dealing with the monotheistic versus polytheistic overtones, etc. That is kind of how it makes the most sense to me if you're going to do this, and you're going to do it well. I'm assuming that he's trying to do this well, and that this isn't some sort of long con money laundering scheme, which has been our kind of our line of thinking this whole time. I'm going to go with an altruistic view that isn't it. So
yeah, I have to agree that you've got to do something that's different enough from the reimagining, right? Like, you've got to do something that is, the Cylons being human was, for the time, a great metaphor for events that were going on around us in our society, right?
Yes.
We had 9/11, we had a lot of terrorism going on that was not as clear, good and evil or black and white as had been in the past. And so he so Ron Moore played on those themes and played on them brilliantly.
Yeah.
You have to move away from that. You have to do something different. And in some ways, whether it's a reboot or not a reboot, I think whoever tries to take this on and tries to do something different, in a lot of ways, is going to be kind of fighting an uphill battle, because as we talked about, I love the fact that Ron Moore got into themes of religion, got into themes of what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be, real, and all of that. Like, I forget exactly how Six puts it in the
she asks, "Are you alive?"
Are you alive? Like, how do you know you're alive? Like that question. And it was really interesting. It kind of got you thinking about it a little bit, because of the way we as humans, can be, and the way we choose to live our lives. And so I think you got to do something different from that. But it's not to say there isn't story to be told. It's just you've got to diverge away from that. Otherwise, you're going to be too derivative of what had been done before.
True. So I think my two big ideas here in terms of big shifts to get away from the Ron Moore reimagining is one, go back to Baltar as a straight ahead bad guy. Just make him an out and out unredeeming heel.
No more Mr. Nice Guyus.
Exactly. So for those of you keeping track at home, in the 2004 show, Baltar he's kind of a playboy. He's like Tony Stark, but kind of dumber. In that he's ultra smart, but he is a sucker for women. And he is ultimately manipulated into the downfall of the 12 colonies.
Yeah.
Here, he didn't in this new one, and going back to who Baltar was in the original show, in the Glenn Larson show, he was just a bad guy. Like, he sold out his counterparts in the human race to the Cylons. Go back to that. Make him an unrepentant bad guy. Like, he didn't unwittingly sell out the colonies. He did it on purpose, and he was glad to do it. The second idea would be the show goes back to kind of what the original show was. It's the original timeline. There's no earlier Cylon War. The Ron Moore show took place after the Cylon War. So that was an interesting way to make the show different immediately, because now the Cylons have been gone. There's already been a war. There's been this experience, and now people are kind of lax, like, oh, it's over now, and nobody thinks about it anymore. This has to take place, back in the day. This is the origin story. This is how the Cylons came to be and how they overthrow the colonies. So then it's like, okay, what is the overarching theme here? Like, what's the kind of thing that you play on? And in the Ron Moore show, as you mentioned, there's a lot of post 9/11 imagery. There's a lot of that post 9/11 feel to the show. And I think the gimme here is artificial intelligence, because that is a huge part of our society right now. And we're seeing more and more and more where AI is getting closer and closer to the things that we have seen and remember growing up in sci-fi movies and TV shows. So now we're getting to like that point. It's almost like having Star Trek now and seeing the communicators. You're like, oh, that's so quaint and old fashioned. Like, my iPhone does what the Star Trek communicator and the tricorder and half of the computer does, all in my pocket. But I think that's a way that you kind of establish a bit of a difference. So AI is really, and this goes into the Cylons, of the creation of the Cylons. And I think the way that you go through this is that Baltar is the genius visionary, scientist, and he's developing this, the most advanced AI anyone has ever seen. And then you have to have that inciting incident. You have to, and then something happens. And take your pick of disasters here, whether it's an experiment going awry, it's, some sort of AI that's supposed to be entrusting people that's been uber safe, and then all of a sudden it just goes awry, and, hundreds of people are dead or something, whatever. You take your pick. And basically then the colonies ban further development of AI. Of course, Baltar doesn't like this, and he continues his work in secret. And basically the entire first season would be building upon this and would lead up to the Cylons becoming sentient. You have to let this go for a long period of time and really build the tension with this. Now, the interesting thing here is both in Ron Moore and Larson's show, the OG show, it kind of starts with like, oh, and people are living their lives, and all of a sudden, oh crap, we're getting killed, and the Cylons are invading, and they're nuking the planets, and all of this. We got to get out of here. That's really at the beginning of both of those shows. Like, that's like the setup of the entire, and then it's a chase, essentially. So in order to have a slow burn and to get you through to that, you've got to have some sort of outside conflict. And I don't think you want to introduce an alien race, want to introduce like other worlds beyond the 12 colonies, because I think that can just get confusing. I think that it should be some sort of conflict within the colonies, because it also raises the question of like, well, if there's no outer threat, and there's no conflict between the colonies, because that was, the original show, it was very much a, kind of utopic society. And even in the Ron Moore show, like, yeah, there's some kind of prejudices between the colonies and stuff like that, but it didn't seem like it was that big of a deal. It wasn't out and out fighting. Here, I think which was one of the big questions of like, okay, well then, in the first place, back in the day, why would you have the Battlestars anyways? Who are you fighting? What are you defending yourself from? So I think the idea is that, basically the conflict to necessitate the need for Battlestars in the first place is that there's been a series of wars and conflicts between colonies. And that right now, when the series starts, it's kind of an uneasy piece. Like, there's been alliances, there's been conflict, there's been wars fought between the different colonies. And so each colony has their own allotment of Battlestars or, ships that they're ready. But ultimately, right now, everything is okay for now. That sets up some conflict, and you can use that maybe to hide some of what Balter's doing, that he's starting to kind of sow dissension amongst the 12 colonies through what he's doing. And that this is all going to lead up to, through an entire season, to, okay, and then here's the apocalypse. And the end of that first season is, okay, now Galactica has escaped. And that's where you kick off the chase. So you put all that off in order to do kind of set that tone of like, what in the hell is going on, and uneasy tension, and you kind of make you make it a slow burn through the whole first season. The other thing you have to get into is characters, because Ron Moore's show introduced a ton of characters, whereas the first Battlestar Galactica was a little bit thinner on regular characters. And I loved Ron Moore's idea of having a ginormous cast. It was great. However, they got exceedingly lucky with a lot of the day players that they had. Oh my gosh, I can't remember his name. Played Saltai.
I don't remember his name either.
But like that, and there was several other actors who were essentially day players. They found them in Canada where they were filming, and
Michael Hogan.
Michael Hogan, thank you.
Michael Hogan.
The great Michael Hogan. And they were not necessarily like, brought in. They were just like, hey, we got a guy who fits, and they're cheap because we're already paying. It's a cast of thousands. Trying to catch that lightning in a bottle is going to be difficult. So you're probably going to try and make your cast a little bit leaner this time and really focus on some of those main characters, I think. And then work your secondary characters in. But I mean, right from the get-go, you have to bring back Adama, Apollo, Starbuck, Ty, and Baltar. Like, those are just kind of must-haves. You got to have the guy who's leading the ship. You got to have his second in command. You got to have the hotshot son. You got to have the son. Then you got to have the hotshot pilot. And then you got to have your bad guy. Those are like the absolute essentials. And then you start getting into, again, we kind of forget, like, Boomer was from the first series was pseudo main character. Like, if you had an like a tier 1, he was like tier 1A, like not quite on the same level as Apollo and Starbuck, but he was right there before you got into some of the other characters. Boomer, and of course Ron Moore's show was much bigger, but then you have like Boomer, Athena, there's a Sheba, there's a few other. I forgot that there was actually a Jolly in the original Glenn Larson, Sergeant Jolly, which I thought was kind of interesting. So anyways, because that was one of the pilots in the miniseries. But anyways, there's a few that you have to bring back, definitely, and those are going to be tough enough to cast. Like Lauren Green from the original Battlestar was a huge get. I mean, that's like it's the Obi-Wan role. Like, Star Wars is not Star Wars if you don't have someone of the gravitas and capability of Alec Guinness. I would have not personally have ever picked Eddie Olmos as a great pick for Adama, but oh my God, he was just tremendous. I think personally overshadows Green at this point. I don't know who you get to play that. I have no idea. But then again, I wouldn't have been able to pick Olmos either. So I'm not going to try and cast that. I think another thing, just to kind of tag on, just to kind of finish this up, because that's really all I've got. I think bringing back some of the Egyptian motifs from the original and kind of tying that piece into Earth's history, whereas Ron Moore decided to leave us in the very, 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 very distant past. The beginning of the intro of the original Battlestar talked about, that maybe these, the 13th colony was Earth was founded by these people from this, this other world, and that they were, the forerunners of the Egyptians, the Mayans, the Toltecs, and Atlantis, and all this stuff. And it's like, tie more into that. Go with that. Try and lean into that, and maybe that can be kind of interesting. But yeah, ultimately, it's very hard for me to do this because I have so much respect and love for the Ron Moore show that it's like I've said it before. I'll say it one more time. I don't want this show to get made. Partially because I just don't. I can't see it not falling flat on its face. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't see it. But anyways, that's how I would book it if it's a reboot.
I think the biggest thing I'm taking away from your idea that I like is the first season build toward the cataclysm. Like, instead of it being the first event, which, is what the 2004 reimagining did. It made the assault on the 12 colonies basically the catalyst to get everything rolling. And it happened in it was done very well. It was showing the disorientation of the fleet. It was showing how, through Baltar's, essentially his deception and his, I don't know what to call it. Like,
it was really
ignorance. In some ways it was ignorance because
he got worked.
He did. He absolutely did. He got worked. He didn't realize when he gave the plans what he was really doing. And it enabled the Cylons to annihilate humanity because he basically gave them the keys to the kingdom, and they were able to just completely obliterate everything.
Mm-hmm.
To go in a different direction where it slowly builds toward this idea of, the AI becoming sentient and essentially, enacting the annihilation as like the season finale, I think is actually kind of interesting. I think it gives you time to kind of develop the characters and kind of set the table for who they are. 2004 version did that, but it was all through flashbacks as they were in the chase. And so we got to know, Starbuck and Apollo's background and Adama's background with both of them. And so, I like it. I think it's an interesting idea to take, that first season to build toward it. And then, basically from there, have them on the journey, but what are they journeying to at that point? And that's what's tricky, because I thought what they did with the 04 series was just genius, having it be a story that was based in the far distant past, and that they were essentially the race that found, that came to Earth, and, essentially, humanity is kind of like this idea of a human Cylon, hybrid, basically. Was really cool, and this will lead to my thoughts on it being, not a reboot but more of a continuation. But no, it's very interesting, and I agree. I think AI, from our culture and our society today, I think looking, trying to give an examination of AI and its benefits and its and also its dangers, I think is interesting to kind of examine and to put through this through a lens of sci-fi that way. So yeah. I also like Baltar just being a full-on heel. I mean, just have him be the bad guy. Forget about him I mean, I love what they did with Baltar in Ron Moore's series. Like I thought it was.
I think he was fantastic. I think it was a much more interesting character, but it's like you got to do something different, and that's like,
yeah,
that's your hinge point. Like, if it's going to be different, it's got to be that character, right? I mean,
right. Well, I have some ideas on other characters in my continuation, which we can get into. But
alrighty.
But overall, yeah, no, I like it. I think it's an interesting idea. I think it's an
Well,
interesting
thank you,
idea.
sir. Well, thank you. Well, let's hear your ideas on if it ain't a reboot, then what? Then it's got to be a continuation. What are your thoughts?
So, kind of the headline for this is, if it's going to be a continuation, there's a few themes that you can play off of. Mm-hmm. Probably the biggest theme is the quote that is mentioned many, many, many times. This has all happened before. This will all happen again. Mm. And so I view, if it's a continuation of the series, that it is in essence, a closing of the loop. And what I mean by that is we will start in the distant future, similar to how we started in or how we ended in the distant past. We start in the distant future, so it's a much more technologically developed Earth than where we are. There isn't the concept of the 12 colonies. It's just Earth is more, space involved, where they can do more travel than they could before. You brought up a great point of, well, why do they need battle stars? And I was thinking about that for the continuation. And I know you kind of poo-pooed the idea of introducing aliens. I actually kind of think it would be interesting, and it's unexplored territory for Galactica to have aliens as part of it. Like that to me would be, excuse me, unexplored territory that they've never gone to before. Mm-hmm. And so the idea here, and I also, sorry, I got to get some water because basically dying over here.
That's all right. At least we have it on video this time.
Oh, good Lord.
Get them clicks.
This is Pellegrino, by the way. This is not just that's Pellegrino. This is the liquor.
Even in like the water, the man is bougie to a fault. Can't just have like a Polar or a store brand seltzer. No. I need to have my fancy imported fizzy water.
Absolutely. Hey, you gotta live the high life, baby.
It's like fizzy water with a touch of olive oil in it.
Good Lord. Hold on. I need a lozenge.
A lozenge?
I need a lozenge. That's my problem. One second, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, I believe this is the first ever incident of a lozenge break in 149 episodes.
Oh,
this is a landmark episode, ladies and gentlemen.
So
is that a CBD lozenge?
No, it is traditional medicinals.
Traditional medicinals.
Organic throat coat. Soothes
sore I drink their tea, dude.
Coughs. Yeah.
Oh, that tea has saved me from so many gigs.
There you go.
Oh yeah, that like if you're gonna make here's a little hint out there for all you folks. If you're gonna make yourself, if you've got a real raggedy cold, all right, here's Uncle Todd's cure for you. What you need to do is need to get some of that throat coat tea. And you make yourself you find the biggest mug that you can find, all right? You get a little bit of lemon juice, toss that in. Probably, I don't know, like 2 good squirts, 3 or 4 if you're feeling saucy. A little bit of honey. Then you pour in a good shot. Or, well, actually no, like depending on how tough of a time you're having or sleeping, half to a full shot of Wild Turkey 101.
Oh, wow.
Then you put your tea bag in, then your hot water. You stir all that up, let it steep for a couple minutes. You drink that. That helps to coat the throat, helps open things up a little bit.
There you go.
A little vitamin C, and hopefully that whiskey just knocks you right out because the sleep is what you really need.
Amen.
Make no mistake, the sleep is what you need.
Amen.
All right. Anyways, are you lozenged up enough?
I'm lozenged up now.
Okay.
So the closing of the loop. So I'll jump to the end of this series. So the idea is that they go on the similar journey as we've seen in the prior 2 Galactica series, except their journey ends when they get back to a organically restored Caprica. So the idea is they go from Earth and they find their way. They travel and find their way back to Caprica, which is at this stage has kind of reinvigorated itself so that they can live there. and then from there they can kind of start similar to how 2004 ended. It's them kind of starting anew in a new area that is to them this sort of new place. The other interesting thing is to get the name Galactica in there is to basically say, because this is in the distant future on Earth, that one of the reasons the name appears is because over time artifacts were found, again because this was in the distant past when they arrived. Even though all the ships burned up, they found remnants of, whether it's the old jump ships or like Adama had one of those ships where he was.
Oh, the Raptors?
The Raptors, thank you. That they were able to find something that gave them evidence of something called a Galactica that existed in the past. They don't know what it is, but they find the name interesting, right?
Which means that dude with the weird hair that's always talking about aliens will finally be right. Like 400 years into the future.
Yes.
He was just way ahead of his time.
Yes. So that's how you get the Galactica name into it. And then,
okay.
The idea is that, similar to what you were saying, that there's the presence of AI. And so it mine is also kind of based off of my idea is also based around AI going amiss, that it is and in this case, rather than it being humans, it's basically, or humans as Cylons, it's really about kind of the machines. It's almost like Terminator-esque, right? It's not necessarily humans, but basically machines turning on humanity. Whether it be robots, whether it be ships, like that's kind of the horrific nature of it all. Is it's things that humanity, like even for us today, like imagine your car, or I've seen clips of the movie, what was it called, Leave the World Behind?
Yes, the Teslas,
like I saw that clip, and to me
it's kind of spooky.
that's kind of a great a great way for automation gone wrong, right? That instead of it doing its intended purpose, it's doing its own thing and you can't control it.
Yeah, or someone else is doing their thing through it. Yeah,
right. And so that's what ends up causing the cataclysm that forces a small remnant to leave Earth and make their way across the galaxy to somewhere else.
Now, is there a chase, or is this purely like space exploration, and we're getting like the monster?
No, it's a chase. So the AI, the idea would be kind of like what we saw in like What If with Ultron, where the only answer is to eliminate all of life. Like that concept. So the AI is convinced that the only way there will be peace is if all of humanity is wiped out. And so it's pursuing them through whatever means it finds. Maybe it has its own battle stars that it commandeers. And I think for Galactica to not get commandeered, it needs to be different than what we saw both in the original, in the 04 series, and what we just saw in Picard season 3, where it's the ship isn't networked like the other ships. Like we got to do something different there. You know what I mean?
You started saying Picard season 3. I'm like,
because Picard season 3 totally ripped off BSG 2004.
Oh my gosh, yes.
If there was ever a blatant ripoff of that show, that was it right there.
Oh no! Oh yeah, the ship isn't, but that's been done so many times. Yeah. Like you go to Pacific Rim with the Jaeger that's not digital, and it's totally. But yeah, that was blatant.
Yes,
that was like Ron Moore. I'm wondering, is like, should I contact my attorneys, because this seems particularly egregious. Like, I'm guessing he actually did make a call. Like, is this actionable? It feels like it ought to be.
Or maybe they contacted him and said, hey, whoa, player.
We've got a case of scotch with your name on it.
We got a little something for you to smooth this over. Now, look, I could whoop your ass.
One of the greatest wrestling gimmicks ever. I don't care what anyone says.
God bless you, Charles. Right?
Just like the fact that the dude comes out and it's like he's ready to fight, but you know what? If he can win without,
he's ready to wheel and deal.
Let's see what we can work out here. I was like, that's such an interesting little twist.
And so going back to the show, maybe
please.
One of the things too that can come out of it is if AI can be conscious, be sentient and have a consciousness, that maybe we start to see AI that, like maybe Galactica's deal is the AI doesn't want to go against humanity. Like there's actually ways it can kind of differentiate and separate itself from kind of the master, so to speak. So
you have like a friendly AI.
Kind of, yeah. What else? Part of this could also be, as part of the antagonist, we could have a sect of humans.
Dude, you know what would be great?
Who are AI sympathetic, yes?
Is there any way we can get Katie Sackhoff to do the voice of the Galactica AI?
That would be cool.
That would be just so awesome. I could totally see that. Just there's something about. Granted, I see Katie Sackhoff playing everything. Like I could see her. I could cast her as the new Iron Man in a heartbeat and talk myself into it. But just something about, I'm like, that would work.
Yeah,
that would work so well.
That would. Well, and what I have here for some of the characters too.
Either that or second choice James Callis.
Oh, you got it. Yeah, that would be great.
Just a bat spit insane AI.
That would be
even better. An unhinged AI. Oh,
that would be phenomenal. No more Mr. Nice Guy.
Like the silence attacking. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just pondering over here.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you.
No, it's all right.
Continue.
Another part with the antagonist could be, you could have some humans that are kind of assisting the AI, like they were unhappy with, kind of society and humanity as a whole. They thought this was a way to kind of bring about change. It goes way beyond what they expected it to, but now they're all in at this point. So they're just in the bag, helping this evil, basically machine kind of eliminate humanity overall. Is another thought, because then you could also play with the idea that there could be characters that are sympathetic to some of those reasons, and that's where I get into, kind of the Galactica crew. I look at like Apollo and Starbuck. Maybe you can have them be brothers as opposed to what they were in 2004, but maybe you have them as brothers who are at odds, that like one is kind of sympathetic toward it. Maybe even, there's a twist where he kind of assists what they're, doing in terms of sabotaging, but in the long run ends up being kind of a redemption story. The thing that's interesting. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna quickly. I love the idea of what you're doing with that. The only thing I would have a problem with in the continuation is using the same names.
Okay.
Like I can go with like Galactica being a ship.
Yeah.
The idea of like there being another Adama and he just so happens to be the head of the ship, and Starbuck and Apollo, like I think if you did different names, it's a little bit more believable. But anyways, I understand using the shorthand right now, but I just
yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, it can't be the same set of characters. You're 100% right. But the thing I was writing down, which is kind of interesting.
I mean, there's different, there's similar archetypes.
Right,
that are going to be there. Yeah.
Like at first, like I was thinking Adama this time could be more of a Picard kind of character, where he's kind of like, cut off emotionally and a little distant from humans as a whole. But then I got to thinking, well, if we're trying to think just differently about the series, what if the Adama character, name could be different, is female and has a different take on Adama or it has a different take on the Admiral character? I think that'd be interesting. Katie Sackhoff as the Admiral.
I was already thinking that. You know what? Just cast them all as Katie Sackhoff. It'll be a one-woman tour de force. There's clones. There's clones, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh my gosh.
They all have different hairstyles, and that's how you tell them apart. Like
I was struggling a little bit with the Ty character, how to differentiate their treatment of him, because it seems like, unless you reverse what Adama and Ty were from 2004, which is Adama or the Admiral is more reckless, and you have the first officer who's the one who has his head on straight and is thinking clearly. But again, it gets a little bit like, okay, you're kind of playing with archetypes and moving them around, sort of thing.
Which is fair. I mean, because ultimately all of those characters fit into some type of box, or they. If you look at it as a checklist, they check different boxes. So I think that's fair, and especially if you don't tie them to the same names.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just a whole new set of characters, I think that works. And I think it would give it the best chance of succeeding. Honestly,
yeah. Baltar, like, I mean, it's very similar to you. I think Baltar is kind of the main drive behind the AI, and is yes,
Unless
Baltar is the AI.
no, we just go whole hog, and they back a dump truck up to every former cast member of BSG that they can. No, and then they cast them in different roles.
So the chief is the admiral.
Yes, and Eddie Olmos is Baltar. I mean, just go nuts.
It's $1 million idea.
Just people's heads would explode.
Oh my gosh.
But you know what? That's probably the one way I'd be like, I am committed to watching every single episode.
Yep.
I want to see how absolutely like insane. Like, I want this to be like, I just don't want this to be insane. I want it to be no holds bar.
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon in a pile of cocaine over a weekend writing a script insane. That's the level of insanity I'm looking for.
Good God.
It's a very narrow niche, but I think it could work. I really do.
It could. Probably, and then probably, another difference from what you were proposing from what I'm thinking is that the humans that are running have to have some assistance, because, at this time, I haven't really thought through like from a space travel perspective, are they traveling outside the solar system? Or are they traveling within the solar system? Right. I'm thinking this is where you can bring aliens in, that maybe they befriend, some races who, kind of understand their plight and are willing to help them. You could also bring back, one other thread from the old series was, at the end of the 04 series, they let the tin can Cylons go. And so maybe you bring them back to basically, honor the peace that they had with the original humans and kind of help guide them. And that would make sense, right? They might know where Caprica is, right? Because how are they going to find him? I mean, we all saw the journey the 04 crew went through, and they went through some crazy places to get to where they got to. So maybe the tin can Cylons, maybe the aliens kind of help them in their journey back to, some sort of, restored Caprica, which I thought would be kind of cool, And so you have some tie-ins to the original series, but it isn't like a one-for-one like retelling. And you have a very good point. Like, you can't go with the same characters. It can't be Adama. It can't be Apollo. It can't be Starbuck. It's got to be some variation of that stuff. Like maybe you have some of the tag names still, but it's not like one for one, like Lee Adama, like, Admiral Adama, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you got to play with the relationships. Like, you can't have the Admiral having a son and having this like daughter that isn't really his daughter and all that. Yeah. Like that's all like what made 04 great, but mix it up a little bit. Like, you can still have that in maybe a different variation where it's not like so derivative, but it still honors kind of the character driven approach that Moore took.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing here is maybe trying to explore a little bit, outside of the realm of what Galactic has done before, bringing maybe, an alien race or two in, having the AI being this more kind of ruthless, unstoppable force, like it's just, not, it's cold, it's logical, it's not human. And so therefore its decision-making is much more ruthless than our own. Mm-hmm. But have it be this thing that is relentlessly pursuing them. Which I think would be, it's similar in some ways, but in other ways it would be a little different because, unlike the 04 series, we saw over time that the main antagonist started to understand the humans' plight and they all started to understand each other. This would be more a story of humanity kind of escaping the thing that they thought would make their lives easier and running from it and starting anew in a place where, really was kind of the cradle of what started, Earth's run, in and of itself from the 04 series. So that's where I think you could do kind of, I mean, and this was just kind of off the cuff thinking. If I thought about it a little bit more deeply, I might have some more interesting ideas, but I think the common thread between you and I is I think AI is the thing to plug into. It's what's at the top of everyone's mind right now. It's the thing that people are wondering, is it going to displace jobs? Is it going to, really better our lives, or is it going to make it worse? Mm-hmm. Is it going to cause some calamity that we can't foresee because the machines become sentient or something like that? But it can also be something that's I don't want to say it's like a melding of Galactica and Star Trek, but it could open the door for some more, some storytelling that hasn't been done inside of that brand before, and that could be interesting. It could also go horrifically wrong as well, but
Oh yeah, totally.
it's something where you could introduce. For the alien races, maybe there's an evil race, that they got to work against or something like that. But at least, you're playing with some different pieces than you played with in the original series, and it could at least facilitate a different story.
Yeah, no, dude, and I think you're selling yourself a little short here, because I spent a lot of time thinking about this over like the last couple days. Well, I mean, not a lot of time. I spent time thinking about it, which is more than I usually do. So, and really, the reason I couldn't come up with anything, and that I kind of dead ended on this, is because for me, and maybe I'm thinking a little bit too much into the production side, because everything I came up with was if you have a guy like Esmail, again, going back to where I was before, like this is a guy who obviously has quite a bit of clout right now. He has his own vision. He has his own way of doing things. Why would you marry yourself to the visual and storytelling language of something else?
Yep.
Because you're hemmed in by that. Because the only way I thought that it could work is if you do, okay, it's a prequel. It takes place during the first Cylon War. Yep. You're untethered to all of the characters except for Ty and Adama. Mm-hmm. And Ty, you don't even have to mention him, because you don't know if he's serving on the same ship as Adama. Adama, he was on the Galactica, but do you really have to focus on him? Not necessarily. But eventually you do have to meet up with, if you're going to truly do it in the same canon, you have to meet up with that other story, and it can't look that much different. Right. So I was like, I just don't see it working. Dude, your ideas to me took this in a totally other direction I hadn't even considered. Now I look at that and I'm like, that's a legit way of doing that. I could totally see that. So, I mean, don't sell that short at all. Like that, honestly, that's a terrific idea.
All right, keep an eye on your email. I'll send you the first script. We'll have this thing written before Esmail series even gets like into production.
Are you kidding? Like they don't even have an outline right now. There's nothing. There's Stugazza, as my father-in-law used to say.
Yes.
But no, I think your idea is really interesting.
Thank you.
And I would actually be willing to give that a try.
Thank you.
Well, there it is. There are two ways of
fantasy
booking the new BSG reboot by Sam Esmail. Of course, as we have stated before, we'll be just fine if none of this ever happens.
And Uncle Todd was way too kind to me. I think it was the drugs I'm taking to kind of help with this cold.
So say we all.
So say we all.
All right, sir. Well, what have you got for and another thing this episode?
I alluded to it kind of at the beginning, but with our Week in Geek item on Geddy Lee. But I am in the throes of reading his book, aptly titled "My Effin' Life." EFFIN is how it's spelled. It is a memoir that he has put together of his life, and it is so far very fascinating. I was sharing with Uncle Todd the beginning of the book. First two chapters are kind of the early part of his life up until his father passed away when he was 11 or 12. He was kind of thrust into a year of essentially mourning per kind of the Jewish habits. That they are rituals that they go through with him being the oldest child in his family. And then his third chapter goes into a lot of detail of what his basically what his ancestors, what his grandparents went through during World War II and living in Poland, and his mother and father who were not married at the time. They actually met each other at a concentration camp. But he just really kind of outlined and laid out all the travails and tribulations that they went through during that time, and miraculously over a 6-year span survived those camps and made their way to Toronto, where they were married they were married in Germany, I believe, but went to Toronto to start a life anew, and that's where he and his siblings had grown up. So right now I'm at the point of where he's just getting into basically the early version of Rush is coming together, and they're playing around like different places in Toronto. But it's just really a fascinating read of his journey, and I'm excited to see what else comes down the pipe as far as his his story with Peart and with Alex Lifeson, and just their journey, four decades as a band, as well as what he went through, with Peart's passing. That's something I went to he was doing a book tour where he was, it's kind of a speaking tour that he went on. And so he does touch on that topic, and he gets emotional about it because they were really like a brotherhood. And that's one thing that's always stood out to me, about the band Rush is more than them being a band, as you see with other acts where it's more business than anything else. These guys, you could tell, are bonded, are brothers, are like-minded, and just cut from a very similar cloth. And so it's interesting to see and hear about the way they operate and the way they operated as a band, both creatively and with their ideas, where just very, very supportive of change, of experimentation, of differences. And it made, it really made their discography very rich and very deep, as we've covered in past episodes. I will reference back to, I think when we were in double digits for episodes, I think it was episode 50 or 51, somewhere around there, where we had our good friend Brindamore on to talk about Rush. And maybe we need to do a refresher on that at some point. But My Effin' Life by Geddy Lee, get it at a bookstore and do check it out. It is a really, really good read.
That refresher episode would be a great episode for everyone who's tired of me yammering through episodes, because that was probably the quietest I've been on any episode. It was like I had a laryngitis. It was just you and Brendan Moore talking back and forth, and occasionally me asking a question like, I don't understand.
And then we had the Tower of Power episode, and it was flipped the other way. But apparently Uncle Todd complimented me on my hosting abilities. I was very professional as the host. So
you did. You were a very good conversational manager there.
That was your friend Jim Robbins, I believe, who was on. So
yes, indeed.
That's right. What is your and another thing, sir?
So over the last month and a half, I kind of pseudo binge watched Monarch: Legacy of Monsters on Apple TV. And what struck me, first of all, I would not say that this is like one of the greatest things I've ever watched on TV or one of the greatest streaming shows or anything like that. It's not in that category. It was a fun show. It was very interesting concepts. What intrigued me most, besides finally realizing, oh my gosh, I felt like a complete idiot. I can't remember if I was talking to you about this or not, but you remember how we were making fun of the new Captain America, the bionic chin?
Yeah.
No idea that was Kurt Russell's kid.
Oh yeah, you did tell me about that.
No idea. And then I'm watching the show and I'm like, wow, he really looks like young Kurt Russell. Like, it's uncanny.
There's a reason for that.
And I look it up and I'm like, oh yes, yeah, because
called genetics.
Yeah, genes. Oh my gosh, very much on brand.
You know what? I don't blame you, because the first time we see that Captain America in that series, the chin really throws you. You know what I mean? Like we're used to the standard.
But then you see him alongside Kurt Russell, and all of a sudden it's like, it fits. And you know what? I don't notice the chin so much.
And ironically, Kurt Russell was Ego, the celestial god.
I know it all.
Never saw him and that guy side by side, unfortunately. So couldn't have made that connection.
But anyway, so what really kind of intrigued me was the fact that I felt like this show did a really good job of kind of spackling some of the holes between all of the Godzilla movies, which, I've enjoyed most of them pretty much, but they're uneven, and there's some spots that kind of go, if you start thinking about it too much. I felt like the show actually did a really good job of filling in some of the blanks, of knitting some of the things together and smoothing out some of the wrinkles that were present. And as the more I went through the show, the more I was like, this is how Marvel needs to be using streaming. They don't need to be necessarily introducing new characters or a tremendous amount of new story or furthering other plot lines, like they need to use this to fill in some of the cracks and smooth out some of the issues. Like tell some stories with existing characters or find a way, almost like an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. thing back in the day, which I believe they're still not necessarily recognizing Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as canon in terms of like the MCU now, because it was a
Really?
Well, yeah, because a lot of those older shows they don't recognize, even though they've somewhat peripherally referenced them.
Yeah,
you know, it's not officially recognized as like, yes, this is the way. Even though they brought back the guy who played Matt Murdock, Daredevil, from his Netflix, or was it Netflix or some other show?
Yeah, it was Netflix. Yeah,
but they've and of course Kingpin came from. Was that Punisher or was it Jessica Jones? One of those. But they're kind of carrying over some of these, but they're not necessarily acknowledging like, oh yes, and those shows all definitely took place within here. But if you were to find some sort of mechanism like an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., although that would be a pretty damn good one, some sort of mechanism to work underneath all of these other things and to vaguely touch on some of the areas to then be like, oh, and this is how this took place. And this is how this took place. And focus a little bit more, even though there was a larger story with that season of Monarch Legends, a Legacy of Monsters, using that to kind of smooth out some of the issues that you had. Like, this is something that would work well for Marvel if they focus their streaming shows on this instead of necessarily introducing new characters or, you know, trying to, you know, jumpstart a new story string or something. Like, this would be a good way for them to fill in some holes and smooth out some of the things that are it's a little bumpy. Like, you didn't quite stick the landing there. Maybe there's a way you can do that through a streaming show and make that work a little better, you know. But otherwise, I mean, it was a fun show. It was a fun watch. I enjoyed it. I mean, they're ambitious, man. I'll give them that. They were very ambitious. There were times when the streaming budget and movie budget differences showed. But overall, they did a great job. Like the monsters looked good. You know, it kind of worked for me, and I enjoyed it a lot. So I'd recommend. If you're at all into any of the Godzilla movies, you know, that sort of thing, kind of, you get a kick out of it. I think you would enjoy this show.
Nice.
So just give it a watch if you happen to have Apple TV.
All right, I'll check that out.
You should. And one of these days, I'll finally get around to finishing the new season of For All Mankind.
You better.
I don't know why. I've just stalled out on that.
Phenomenal.
I'm horrible. You know what it is? Phenomenal. It's the beard. It's the cheesy dollar store, party store beard that they've got Ed wearing. That's just killing me.
Ed's getting older. You got to deal with it.
He's getting older, but you can get a better beard. That looks like it was glued on, like it was like a high school, like a grade school play.
He might look like Biff Tannen from 2015.
Oh, he wishes he looked that good. It's all patchy. It looks like you can still see the Elmer's glue. Like, it's horrible.
Imagine what he's going to look like, you know, if well, I don't want to give anything away. Never mind.
If they do a season 5, I mean, maybe that'll help. You know what, he's gonna
be Grandpa Simpson at that point. You realize he's like, death is behind every corner. Death.
Well, I'm surprised he isn't doing that now. I'm only like 4 episodes in. I'm surprised he isn't like every time he opens the door, death. Ed, that's the food. That's the cafeteria. Yep. Oh, okay. Death.
Yeah.
That's a particle of space junk. All right, we really need to get him away from the flight deck. Someone get a set of checkers.
Oh, sweet Moses.
Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sticking with us through this. We'd like to thank all the members of the Free Range Idiocy congregation who have stuck through here. If you're not a member of the Free Range Idiocy congregation, if you're in fact just hearing about it for the first time, we like to think of it as the nicer cult.
Welcome.
And basically it is just a way of saying that I am a fan of these two idiots and I am proud of it. Or maybe you're just not as ashamed of it, or maybe you just have low standards, in which case we're fine with all of those, really. Thank God for low standards. It's the only reason we still have a show. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. If you would like to truly become a member of the Free Range Idiocy congregation, we don't pass the collection plate. In fact, we go into the hole on this show every single year. It's a tax dodge, quite honestly.
Man, they called him as the Kleenex box, though. Good Lord.
I'm surprised you. How many empty of those do you have there?
Do you want me to throw up, like I can pick up off the ground and throw up in the air all the Kleenex I have?
No, please, because I don't want one to stick to the screen and slowly just ooze down. It'd be nasty. But anyways, back to what I was saying. If you'd like to become a part of the Free Range Idiocy congregation, all you got to do is subscribe. You can do that by going to freerangeidiocy.com, and you can that'll take you to our Podbean page. You can subscribe right there. You can download individual episodes, or you can subscribe to the Podbean app. If you say to yourself, you know what, I got enough damn apps in my life, I don't need another one, go ahead and search for us on Apple Music. We are on Spotify. We are on Pandora. We're on Google Podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on all the podcast channels. Just search for Free Range Idiocy. You're bound to find us. You can also find us on YouTube, and actually, YouTube might be a good way to go, because now you're going to be able to see us on YouTube.
The handsome devils that we are.
Actually, now I think about it, that might be a reason why you want to find us on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts.
I might find some feedback in my inbox saying, can you please go back to audio only?
There's a reason why Uncle Corny doesn't do video. There's a reason. He can do his show wearing whatever he wants, and
Although, just a quick plug for Uncle Corny, but before we wrap up, you got to go back and listen to the last couple of weeks of episodes. That man is starting to sing almost like every episode, and his poor co-host is like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Oh, Uncle Corny shouldn't sing. He shouldn't even sing in a car by himself.
Oh, my gosh.
It's bad. It's bad. But anyways, so be sure to subscribe. You can find us on the social medias. Also, we are on Facebook. We are on YouTube. We are on Instagram. All of those are at Free Range Idiocy. If you have any questions, thoughts, or concerns, any ideas for a show, or if you just got a question you'd like to ask the idiots on the show, send those to Tim at freerangeidiocy.com, and we will get back to you forthwith, if not sooner. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for me to stop yakking, and it's time for me to hand this over to the less idiotic of the two idiots who run this show, but not before I ask the second most important question in all of human history. And as we know, the most important question is, what is hip? The second being, what in the hell did we learn this episode, sir?
We have learned the following. We have learned that the man they call Tim has a whole different range to his voice when he has a head cold.
Ladies and gentlemen, Barry White.
Oh, yeah.
Can't get enough of your love. Where's that disco orchestra when you need one?
We have also learned that there is going to be a Fantasy Gridiron retrospective over the next 9 episodes that Uncle Todd 100% supports. Or maybe not. We have learned that Old Forester 115 proof is good for what ails you. And the man they call Tim is expecting a clean bill of health tomorrow morning when he wakes up. We have also learned that Uncle Todd and the man they call Tim both agree that AI needs to be the primary antagonistic force in the Battlestar Galactica reboot/not reboot. One way or another, the machines are coming for us. Batten down the hatches, ladies and gentlemen. We're all going down.
Yeah, all you people out there who are using Chat GPT, you're the ones who are going to do us in. Thanks.
Beware of your toaster. It may jump off the counter and attack you.
No, that's Ghostbusters 2. That's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other thing. Oh my gosh. But yeah, we have also learned that if Sam Esmail and his writers drag their feet any further, the gentlemen here at Free Range Idiocy are happy to get an outline, a script, something going so that we can get this thing flying with a total Katie Sackhoff only cast per Uncle Todd's wishes. So
I could have built a Viper from scratch in my garage in the time it's taken Sam Esmail to get to the point where he's like, we've kind of got an outline. Like, really?
Well, you are looking to get into woodworking, sir. So I do think, a replica.
I've got a fully functional FTL drive in my basement right now. What have you been doing?
I'm using it on the spiders to get rid of them. Oh my gosh!
I want one of those guns like they used in the miniseries where you like it was like the Blade Runner gun where it shot to the guy and you saw him.
Yeah.
I want one of those to take out the spiders.
Oh my gosh! We've also learned that the throat lozenge is the.
No, wait, are you saying lozenge or lozenge?
Lozenge.
So now you split the difference. You were saying lozenge.
No, I said lozenge.
Yes, right there, lozenge.
Right, I said lozenge.
Lozenge, I thought. Lozenge? Sweet tomato.
Nonetheless, it was the elixir for the man they called him Spacey Toes to come back. So he was gagging on his own throat. That and some Pellegrino, which, we've learned is the water of choice. As bougie as it is.
Olive oil in there. That's what really is doing.
Silky smooth. Well, with all that being said, thank you again for the listenership, for bearing with us over the course of this hour and a half, these 90 minutes of dulcet tones.
This is a nice, tidy episode. I feel like we ought to keep going.
This is a very nice, tidy episode. Just you stop it. You stop it.
Okay, Gorilla Monsoon.
Will you stop? Nonetheless, we thank you again for the listenership, and as we like to wrap things up, be safe, be healthy, be kind, be good to one another. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. We're closing the range up for the evening.
It's like I picked the wrong week to quit drinking.
I beg your pardon, what did you say?
Damn!
You're such a disappointing pair. I prayed so hard for you. Get out. And don't come back until you've redeemed yourselves.
So say we all.
That outro continues to get longer.
That was a tight outro. With a nice
phrase you're adding on there. Like, I'm just waiting for the next time.
Adios.
Waiting for you to be like, and remember, a stitch in time saves 9.
That's right. It does. So just
loose lips sink ships. Just remember.
I try to educate our listeners at the end of the show because they've had to deal with,
at the end,
89 minutes of idiocy up to that point.
They're brain dead at that point. It's doing them no good.
Oh my gosh!
But they knew what they were in for.
They did. Oh, did we have any cult of personality, any LA Knight during this episode at all?
None.
Oh,
none whatsoever.
Should we end on a high note then, or just not bother? Oh, good Lord!
Just not bother.
Now get the hell out of here!